Have to forgive me because I kind of started the repair, then got the idea that I should maybe record it because I couldn't find any videos for my 2006 Odyssey on how to specifically replace the door lock cylinder itself, not just the actuator or the handle. But basically, really simple steps so far. There is a small plastic panel right here that has a small tab that needs to be pushed in. You open up the door lock or door handle, and it fits in just like this, like so. Take a small flathead, you push the tab in, pull the panel out. Like so. Again, this has already been removed, so it's giving me a little trouble. Okay, anyway, so that's out. Then there's two small Phillips heads that are underneath of that panel. They look like this, both the exact same size. So just a number 1 Phillips head, or number 2 Phillips head, whichever the larger one is. 2 of those. Then here, underneath of the actual pull handle, there's another screw, nothing covering it. That's at an angle, so just make sure you come in at the right angle on it so you don't strip it. And that's a longer screw, Phillips head, same size Phillips head, that comes out. This one's a bit longer, looks like this. Okay. And I will be back in a second. Okay. Next step is going to be to remove the control panel here. And from what I understand, it should just require a panel popping tool to basically work your way around and lift each one of the tabs that are holding it in up. I don't see any other screws here in the actual handle pocket, so let's go ahead and see if that works. Forgive me because I have to keep stopping because I can only record with one hand, or only have one hand to work with. But basically, I went underneath the edge of this switch panel with my panel popper tool and just gently lift it up and slowly work my way around to lift this out of position. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish doing that, and if there's anything I run into, like screws or anything, I'll let you know. So got the panel completely out, and there's 2 harnesses that have the typical push tabs to remove them. So if I can do that with one hand, I'm gonna do that now. That's one, and the second smaller one here at the front of the panel. Well, clearly I can't do that with one hand, so be back. Just to disconnect these 2 harnesses to remove the entire control switch panel. Alright, so next step, that's all the hardware that's holding the door panel on, I believe, unless there's something here behind the sail panel. I don't think there is. Next step should just be to start popping all of the body panels going around the perimeter of the door. And hopefully I'll be able to use this because those things have a tendency to break off and get wrecked as you're pulling the panel off. So hopefully I'll be able to see them and use the tool to properly remove them. So right now I'm just going to start at the bottom and start pulling the door panel off, and then it'll need to be lifted up to come off of the top portion of the door panel. So be back in a second. Another hidden screw here. As you can see, really hard to see. It's back there. So that's gonna need to come out. So I'll be trying to remove the door panel again after I get this. It's the same size as the other long screw that came from underneath of the door pull, right? The one that came out of there, same size as the one that goes here. So now, door panel's pretty much free. And I believe I have some cables and whatnot to disconnect here, so I'll be right back. Coming from inside the actual door itself, which I believe this goes to the door illumination for when the door is open, door light. And then there's a cable here as well, which goes to the actual door handle. Now I'm not replacing the handle, I'm just replacing the lock cylinder, and I don't think I really need to mess around with the interior door handle. So I'm gonna leave that connected, but I am gonna disconnect this harness here for the door light. But I did end up having to partially disconnect the door cable. As you can see here, there's a small clip that it fits into, that this rubber portion here fits into, and then the head of this this kind of stopper here fits into this little clip here. So I just pop that out. It's still connected to the actual door, but the door panel reaches the ground, so I can just kind of set that out of the way. Next step is going to be to start taking the splash shielding off. So that's held on by adhesive that's reusable. So what I'm going to do is start working my way around, pulling this off carefully, being careful not to tear it, because this does prevent water and like noise and that kind of stuff from your driving from in the car. So I'm just going to probably peel back from here down to here, just so I can see what's going on inside with the door handle. So we got the splash shielding off. It's held on by this stuff we like to call Gorilla Snot. It's reusable adhesive, so just try to be careful taking that off so you can get all of it off with the splash shield. Then there is a 10mm bolt through this hole just below the door lock that you can reach, and then there's another one further up that holds the door handle on right here, right there. So this one and the one in the hole are both gonna come out. We should be able to remove the handle at that point. All right, so we got the two 10mm out. The front one here is going through a small metal bracket that slides off the front of the part of the door handle coming into the car. So that comes right off and goes back in just like this. Slides right over it. Just like that. And there's the screw hole. Then the rear one is already out. This is what the bolts look like. So it's two, just like this, 10mm. The rear comes out straight through the hole in here. Then there's a cap here on the side you can pry out. And there's a Phillips head behind there, so I'm gonna do that. Little cap, grommet cap, whatever you want to call it, out. And you can see right there is the Phillips head that needs to come out to be able to completely disconnect the door handle from the outside. So we're gonna take that. As you can see, that screw is all the way inside that hole. So if you want to avoid that screw falling off your screwdriver and dropping down into the door there, you can actually grab just a little ball of this Gorilla Snot here, about like this, right? And you put that on the tip of your screwdriver. And when you go to take out the screw, it'll be stuck on the end of the screwdriver. You don't have to worry about fishing it out of the door. So, be right back. Removing that screw now with our Gorilla Snot on the tip of the screwdriver. It's still in there. All right, to give me a little trouble here. It's just longer than I thought it was. And there you go. Now, as you can see, the door handle is starting to come out. And it looks like the cylinder is right there. And that screw that we took out was right here, which I believe was connected to a bracket a bracket on the inside. So I'm gonna mess around with this and see how this actually comes out, and then we'll look at the lock cylinder. Looking at this, it looks like I need to remove what looks to be the actual electronic switch for the door lock that it's mounted in. If I can get a good shot of it there. This black switch here has, I believe, just one Phillips head that is right here. This brown wire runs to a switch that's connected directly to the output of the lock cylinder. So I should just be able to remove that screw, remove the switch, and then possibly pull the lock cylinder out of the front. So we're gonna get a little bit more of our Gorilla Snot from our old 10mm screw that we just took out. But that's still over here somewhere. There we go. Throw that on the tip of our screwdriver, so we're a little bit off. It's a smaller screw here. And this is a number 1 Phillips head, so it's the smaller of the Phillips head sizes. So you just push that down the tip of your screwdriver, like so. And we're gonna go in through the hole here. You should be able to see it through there and get that little Phillips head off of that switch, what's holding that switch together. It's hard to see. But yeah, let's try it from inside. There's a screw head right there. So we can go right through this hole here and get to that. Get the screw out. My Gorilla Snot trick didn't work, and the screw fell all the way down into the door jamb, and I cannot get it out because I have like hot dog sized fingers. Let me see if I can see it down there. I can barely see it, but luckily we have our handy dandy magnetic tool, retractable. So I'm just gonna extend this guy and see if I can grab him. Let's see if I can feel it first of all. Feel it there. What the heck is that sucker? Oh, I think I see it right there in the middle of the screen. All right. We got something. We gotta wait. Bam! What do you know about that? Fished it out. All right, so now we got the screw out of the switch, electronic switch that mounts to the back of the lock cylinder. So let's see what that looks like around the other side now. Still can't pull the entire handle out, but kind of hoping we won't need to. Actually, it looks like we will have to. I'm unable to get that out because there's still some kind of bracket, I believe like a clip on the inside that's holding this in. All right, so let's go back inside, see what else needs to come out. Minutes of looking around and fumbling in there. This is what I figured out. This is the replacement that I'll be installing that I already have the new key for and all. So this entire mechanism needs to come out of the door in one piece. So you can see you have the actual clip that clips onto the rod that pulls on the rod when you turn the key. Not sure why, quite sure why that's so loose, but either way, this lock cylinder works. But basically this fits around the latch mechanism for the handle itself. Like the latch mechanism for the handle inside of the door is mounted right here in this area. And this is the hole where that 10mm bolt came out of. This is the screw mount where that small #1 Phillips head came out from the side of the door where we had to pull out the plug. So it looks like what I need to do here is to, first of all, there's a zip tie here going through this little zip tie mount that holds the cable for this brown cable here for the actual electric switch that mounts on the back of here that we took the other #1 screw out of from here. Actually, this side one wasn't a #1, that was the #2. This is the #1, really small one that holds that little black electric switch over this, so that switch is activated when you turn the door lock. Or actually, I believe that is what actually turns the door lock. Disregard. Anyway, so I think what I need to do is to cut the zip tie off here so that the switch cable can be removed from here, and detach the lock cylinder rod from this clip here, and then I should be able to slip everything out, this whole thing here, as one unit from the side. So looking in at the latch mechanism, you can see everything I just showed you. Here is the mechanism for the actual door handle latch, or door handle rod, and then that white clip on the lock cylinder arm is over here behind what I believe is the window track. So I'm gonna have to try and get that off. And then here is the zip tie. Really hard to see from right there. You can just barely see where my finger is here. That little white tab that has the zip tie mounting point on it. So we gotta cut this off, cut that off up here and get that wire out of the way. So, okay, this is a little difficult to explain, but there is a tab that comes off the actual door handle mechanism that locks this whole cylinder mounting bracket into place. So this just dropped out of place because I got it loose, but this small tab right here, you need to lift up. So I just used a small flathead and just kind of pried that up a little bit just to give myself enough room to lift it up. And then I disconnected the rod from the other side of the mechanism, and now the entire lock cylinder mount is loose, but I still need to cut that zip tie for the electric switch that mounts on the back of the cylinder. So I'm trying to get this into a position where you can actually see it. Alright, there we go. So there it is. So now this little zip tie right there in the middle of the screen, holding that wire to the cylinder bracket here, needs to be cut so then we can remove the entire assembly. But the issue, I think, the reason that this lock cylinder isn't working is not that the cylinder itself is bad, but I think the latch or the rod that it's connected to that goes to the this mechanism down further, that it runs down to, the same area that the rod from the door handle runs to, I think that's actually disconnected down there, because you can turn the key, but it doesn't unlock the door. So that's telling me that something must be disconnected down here. But I need to replace the cylinder anyway because I have a new key set because I replaced my ignition. So I gotta do all my lock cylinders. And that includes the glove box, the door, and the Lazy Susan storage area in the back, or in the middle of the van. So let me go ahead and cut that and inspect that, whatever it is that rod that was connected right here to this clip and goes through this hole, to see what that's connected to and make sure that that's actually functioning. So mount and lock cylinder itself are completely out. Quick note, you do not have to cut the zip tie that's going through here. This is the new one. But yeah, you don't have to cut that zip tie that goes through there. You can actually just take a pair of needle noses or channel locks and just grab this little tab right here, or the mounting tabs in the back of it, and squeeze those together and just pop the whole thing out all together, like so. So that'll save you a little bit of the headache of trying to get a pair of wire cutters in there to cut that zip tie, because it's near impossible. So that's the easiest way to do that. So now, time to inspect the rod in there that's connected to this clip. So I'm just remembering the problem with the original cylinder was that it doesn't turn at all. So it's either a situation, I bought this van used, where somebody changed out the ignition cylinder before I even changed it, and didn't change the lock cylinder, or something's mechanically broken inside that lock cylinder. But so anyway, I just checked the rod that's connected to the lock cylinder from the inside to see that it's actually connected to the locking mechanism, and it appears it is, because I'm pulling on the rod now. As you can see, the door lock is functioning, so that's good. So now it's just a matter of reinstalling everything, and hopefully we should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with putting in the new lock cylinder back in position where it belongs, and reconnecting the rod, putting in that small screw, remounting the electric switch, and then I guess installation would be the reverse of removal. So finally, after like 30 minutes of struggling, I figured out how to actually get that rod connected back onto this part right here. This is how it's oriented in the car, or in the door, just like this. Right, so it sits there like this, and then there's a rod which is connected to the locking mechanism that runs down, but it's right behind the window track. So it's a pain in the ass to get it lined up to be able to fit into here, and that tip that fits in here is kind of bent at like a 30-degree angle, so you can't really get in here with your hand behind this to hold it and be able to put the rod in. So what I did was I actually mounted this. I kind of test mounted it, or temporarily mounted it in the hole where it belongs, right, sticking out the door, held it from outside the door. Then I was able to somewhat line it up and then get the rod in, but then I had trouble clipping the clip on there to secure it. But turns out this hole over here on the side of the door gives you perfect access to that clip. You can see it right there. So that's just a little tip, so you don't have to go through the 30-minute nightmare I just went through. So next, I just put the electric switch grommet, or mount with the zip tie on it, back into the tab there. I don't know if you can see that. It's right there behind that rod. But mounted that back in. Now I'm getting ready to mount the switch back on with the one Phillips head, and I'll be back. We got our electric switch portion mounted to the back of the lock cylinder. You can see there that the black switch with the silver Phillips head is what I just installed. Now, next, if you recall, there was the screw Phillips head on the side here where you pop that plug out at. Something to keep in mind, there is a small bracket that is in between this part of the door handle and the door itself, and there's a rubber or plastic gasket there as well, which I believe is to keep water out from getting inside the door. So while you're in the process of doing the removal, the cylinder and bracket, just be aware that may fall out of place. But that little metal bracket that's in here now, I don't want to take it back out, has a little tab on it that has a screw mount installed on it, and that actually lines up with the right there. It actually lines up with the little brass screw mount that's on the side of the lock cylinder's bracket, which is right here if you look at the new one. So the way it's oriented inside the car is like so, right? So you have the screw mount, or the brass, threaded bushing there, and then it slides over top. That bracket piece with the screw mount on it slides over top of this one. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, now it's time to put this screw back in through the side, and then we'll reinstall the plug. Once again, take a little ball of our Gorilla Snot, or called a booger of Gorilla Snot, and we're gonna stuff that down into the threads of this screw. Otherwise, we might sit here for 15 minutes trying to get that thing in there and keep dropping it down the door and fishing it out. So this just makes it easier. And remember, you can just grab a little bit of that right off the door, the weather stripping or weather sheeting. Stick it in there, and boom, put your screwdriver right in it. And you're all set, like so. So, at this point, I found it was easier actually to put the two 10mm bolts back in rather than trying to put that small Phillips head in from the side, because it's just impossible to align it with the cylinder bracket and this other bracket that comes from outside the door that needs to align with this screw hole as well. So what I did was I went ahead and put everything in the way it should be and bolted in the two 10mm bolts, one there and then the other one up. Oh, that's the front handle, and then the other one through this hole here, that gold 10mm right there. So that put everything in the position that it needed to be in, and got the mount flush against the door like it's supposed to be, the cylinder mount. So this one was a breeze to put in. And again, I used the Snot Gorilla Booger on that, and it made it a hell of a lot easier to get in without dropping the screw down into the door jamb or into the bottom of the door. So now it's just a matter of, let's see, we have to reposition the door panel. Actually, the smartest thing to do would be to check to make sure that the lock is functioning properly. So let's check that out. Good to go. Okay, so we know we're solid there. You don't want to put everything back together and realize that you didn't connect the rod properly, or something's loose, or you broke something. So check it before you put it back together. So next thing's going to be to reseal the door, then reconnect the interior light or door light harness, then remount the door panel. We'll partially mount it just enough so we can get these two guys hooked back up for the switch panel. Fully mount the door panel, get all the pop rivets back in, put our sail panel back on, and reinstall the switch panel, and make sure everything is, we don't have any leftover hardware or anything. And that's gonna be it. So unless you got other questions or anything like that, good luck, and please leave a like, share, and subscribe. Take care. Yes, don't forget to reconnect your inner door handle cable, because yeah, that's what I did.